Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the Beyond Grad Show. I have my friend Sindhu Mahadevan with me, and we are going to talk about all the things that she did to move and pack her bags from the US and come to Canada, and at least the first year where she got restarted kind of her journey in Canada. We'll dig deep into that completely. If you are watching this show live, go to the comment section of the platform that you're joining us from and just say hi to us and let us know where you're dialing in from. That would be cool. If without further ado, Sindhu, I would like you to introduce yourself in your own words, and then we'll dive deep into what we want to talk about here.
I tend to have an astonishing amount of trouble with this part, so let's let's see if it works. Hi everyone, I'm Sindhu. I am a medical devices quality assurance professional, which is a lot of words for saying I put out new medical devices in the market, everything from heart-lung machines, stethoscopes, defibrillators, pacemakers, that kind of thing, and diagnostic machines. I On the side, I'm very passionate about immigration. I write a newsletter called This Immigrant Life, which features immigrant stories, just ideas and tips on how to navigate immigration from my own substantial experience in the US and Canada now. And I write on LinkedIn, which is probably where most of you know me from,
Yeah, and where we met,
where
and
we
then
met, importantly. Yeah.
we chatted quite a bit. You were over by my neck of woods, so we as a family got together and got a South Indian meal, if I remember correctly.
Yes, that's correct. So
So
fun.
it's been a luxury, and something that you didn't share in your intro that I want to highlight is that Sindhu writes with a clarity of thought that is unlike I have seen on the platform or in the newsletter that she does, to the point that there is a famous podcast called Freakonomics, and they had Sindhu come as an expert. Maybe is that, I don't know if that's the
No,
right
I
word
would
or
say it's
not.
more a guest to share my journey. Yeah.
Yeah, a guest to share your journey. I mean, I think it's probably number in the top 10 of world's podcasts. So that is impressive. And that impressed the hell out of me because I had heard that podcast before Sindhu was on it. And when Sindhu was on it, I was like, dude, what? That is so awesome.
That is truly one of the highlights. You know, the mug they gave me, that black mug is on there.
Nice. Next time we meet, and if we are around your place, then I'll ask for coffee in that mug if that's okay.
Oh
It's
no,
just
that's
for the
not meant to
cool.
be used.
Bummer. All right. Fair enough. Cool. You know what? I would love to start at a place that was the genesis of all of this, right? And
Mhm.
we will definitely come to the picture in the background and what that frame means, but we'll probably keep it in the end. Otherwise, I'll get sidetracked. But I mean, you had a strong career in the US. It was going well. What were you doing there, and what caused the angst when it comes to visa and stuff like that?
So, I have to say, on paper, I had a fantastic career. I worked at large medical device companies. Like Medtronic is sort of like the Apple, Amazon, like FANG of medical device companies. BD is absolutely huge. But the undercurrent of it is that I always worked as a contractor. I never had a full
Mm,
time job in the US, and mostly
mm,
because, unlike tech companies, medical device and pharma companies are relatively shy about sponsorship. So they're very tight fisted about sponsorships. And they like the flexibility of being able to hire a lot of flex workers, let them go when, their FDA issues are done and that kind of thing. So yeah, I had a great career and I didn't have a great career all at the same time. And things kind of came to a head because I never got an H1B. And it's so timely that we're talking about it in April. Hello, I was one of those people too that kept trying and didn't get an H1B in the lottery. And ultimately I had to stop working. And that was a real crash because my career was very hard one, I will say. It took a lot of fighting to get to where I wanted to be. The next step would have been a full time job, like all the other good stuff. we went the opposite way, and I had to stop working, and that was very challenging.
You will laugh at me if I tell you that I waited till my last attempt to apply for an H1B. I was so
Really?
lucky to have gotten in gotten in because I was so prepared. I was like, oh, jo hoga dekha jayega. That has been my attitude ever since I came to the US, and it doesn't really work later down the line if you don't have fallback options. But you faced that. You did not go through multiple attempts. That made you stop your career. Now you couldn't just leave, pack your bags and leave because you were already, I'm assuming, married at that
I
point, or
was.
at least dating, and you had to build a life there as well. What were the dominant emotions during that time?
It's very interesting and quite complex, I would say, that period of time of my life, because whenever I shared with people that this had happened and, I had to stop working and things like that, I don't know whether it's because I'm a woman, but there was a lot of, oh, that's unfortunate, I'm sorry, immediately followed by, comma, but you can use this time to, have a family or, do things at home that you always dreamed of and blah, blah. And in that moment, I never quite said it, but I always felt like, is it because my career is considered optional? Well, what's the problem? Your husband is working. It's fine. I mean, it'll be a bit of a setback, but I did not feel anything. It was quite big for me. I was significantly concerned about how this would all work out if I was outside of the profession for 2 years. See, it's also regulations and the FDA and all that. They move with a certain expectation, right? Like you have to know what's going on an ongoing basis. So I was very concerned, and at that time, my idea was 2 years and not a day more. Right? Like I will give us 2 years to figure out our stuff in the US. I was ready to leave. In 2018, I was ready to leave. In fact, I have evidence. I had applied for express entry and I had an ITA. So
Okay.
it's not even like this is theoretical. I very much
Mhm.
considered leaving, but my husband's career at that time would have suffered had he not immediately like started working, gaining work experience, all of that. And he was a little bit on the fence about leaving. So
Mm.
I preferred that we move with a coherent understanding and an appreciation of why we are moving, right?
Mm.
So I said 2 years, we'll figure out if EB1 works or whatever else. And if not, I'm out of here.
Interesting. So basically, to paraphrase, it was maybe important for Mohan, and I'm just using his name because I know him, but Mohan, your husband, it was important for him to work at that time.
Mhm.
And for you, you had given 2 years because you already had an ITA by that point. So you had already were starting to think about Canada. Before you answer that, I have a quick question. You said I didn't say anything to people suggesting, oh, your career is optional or you can start to do this. Why didn't you ever say anything?
Because the people who I was most comfortable with were not going to just shrug away my career, right? So most of the people who
Mm,
said this were people who I had a little bit of emotional distance with. And see, I feel like when you're going through a tough patch, explaining to people why that is a tough patch is a lot of labor to undertake, right? If you don't already get it, am I really going to explain to you why I'm in a bigger hole than you think I am? It's a strange situation to be in, and honestly, I just didn't have that fight in me. I was so exhausted, Varun. I was so
mm.
exhausted.
The analogy that came to mind right away when you said this is a coolie at the train station or a porter at the train station with two bags already on their head, and you are saying, "Oh, can you just hold one more?"
So
you're
true.
like, you're
So
like,
true.
get the hell out of here. Okay, so then let's come back to the question that I asked: is that when had you already started thinking of Canada? Because if you already had an ITA, it means that you were already thinking of that as a backup, which is
Yeah.
also unique, right? Not a lot of people think about backups till they actually need one.
So I filed for the first time express entry. I think I filed in 20 early in 2018. And Varun, you know me, I have backups, and then I have backups for backups, and it's just it's a terrible way to live. But I am just one of those very prepared people. I should also add that I have an advantage. I am very familiar and comfortable with reading a lot of regulatory language, navigating like really dense bureaucratic things. And I tend to understand how these systems work in a way that's probably not accessible to a lot of people, or at least quite a bit harder. So I
Mm,
had a clear understanding of the green card backlog, how the H-1B system works, all of that by the time 2018 rolled around. And I graduated in 2014, just to, give some
mm,
context there. So I knew that the green card backlog was a thing. I knew EB to NIW would not work for us. I checked all of that off with, my husband, and I went through that. So I knew this was going nowhere if EB1 was not in the picture. So I needed a backup plan. So that was already in place. We already had an ITA. So we had to reject that and hope that in 2 years we would get to where we needed to be. In hindsight, that was a
mm.
risky move, but yeah,
I always feel like you need to have options in life, and options kind of help you uh, make the right decision. I
100%.
remember a time where we were contemplating giving the birth to our oldest one in India, saying
Mm,
that, oh, maybe we eventually want to move there. Why not just do it in India? We family around. And Shirali's uncle, my wife's uncle, was like, if you do that, you will be the biggest fool there is on this planet. It's like
yeah.
always have options, right? So have that US citizenship. You can always give it up if you want to in the future have the Indian citizenship. And I remember that so clearly, even though my child is now 9 years old almost.
Hmm.
So I agree with you from the standpoint that having options is great. You mentioned something about reading dense documents and how you are comfortable with it. Where does that come from, you think?
My
I mean, yes,
profession.
your background, your professional background, but I want to go a step further back. Like, were you always somebody who read like really laborious novels growing up or something like that?
No, I was your standard like Nancy Drew Hardy Boys girl,
Nice.
but Um, I will say that going through graduate school, you do have to read, at least in my world, you have to read a lot of research papers. You have to read a lot of review articles. You just have to absorb a lot of information,
Mm,
which is a little bit dense. And
mm,
also, somewhere along my master's journey, I became a really, really committed nonfiction reader. And to this day,
mm,
I am an almost exclusively nonfiction reader. Um, I have a real interest and enthusiasm for how things work.
mm,
Not in the entrepreneurial kind of sense, there's that version of how things work, but just a policy, bureaucracy kind of idea of, hey, how does this work? And
mm.
if something is not working, to me, the answer is it must be something systemic, and I have to understand it so that I can unravel it. That's just how my head tends to work. And then, of course, through your journey in medical devices and all that, you absorb a lot of content, which is quite uh, open to interpretation. There's like vague language and things like that. So it's a little bit legalistic, I would say.
Okay. So it basically was your profession that helped you do that. And that helped you kind of understand and have that foresight that US is going to be a malaise going forward
Yeah.
immigration wise. So you had already set up Canada to be your option,
Yeah.
but there's a big difference, and we all know a lot of people who decide to apply to Canada and then decide to move to Canada. There's a huge difference
Yeah.
in that space. How did you and your husband decide to finally move to Canada?
Yeah, see, I think the pandemic, I've been a different person on the other end of the pandemic. So right before the pandemic, we applied for what would be our the PR that we actually exercised, right? But going through the pandemic was a horrifying experience, singularly. But the other thing also was that I was caught in a place where I was caught between either staying in the US and being available for Mohan, or if I went to India, I could go and risk that journey, but I wouldn't be able to come back because I wouldn't have stamping, right?
mm, mm,
And I decided then and there, I was very angry with myself. I was like, how did I put myself in this position, right? Uh, this should never have happened. Like, I should never have been okay with accepting that I can either do this or I can do that, and having to choose between family and my husband and our
mm,
life in the US. So it was very clear to me that, and it became increasingly clear to us, both of us, that this is not tenable, and
mm,
no benefit is worth this cost.
mm,
And so that's what I would say led to us leaving. I should add that even if the pandemic had not happened, I think if EB1 didn't come through, and I keep saying EB1 because my husband is a scientist,
mm.
we would have had a decent shot. But for many reasons that didn't work out. And yeah, coming to Canada, by the time I came to Canada, my God, I couldn't get here fast enough.
So it was the inability for you to go and stay with your family because you were in this whole visa situation and you would need a stamping. No, that was not it. What
No,
was?
not
Can you
exactly.
can you share more about choosing between family and your life in the US?
So I think the fear for me was, what if somebody fell sick there and they needed
Mm,
me,
mm,
and I could go, but I couldn't come back, or I wouldn't go at
mm,
all because I had to stay here. And it's hardly unforeseeable in a pandemic that both sides fall sick,
mm,
right? Like, Mohan could
mm,
need me and my family could need me, or his family could need me. And
mm,
so not being able to be available for the people I loved the most in the world, and people with whom I have the highest degree of duty and responsibility, was too much to bear. It just felt like
mm.
this is a prison, and I get me the hell out.
So you could clearly see like the golden handcuffs, right? That
Oh yeah.
US and US salary and US career can bring to you. So that was a big motivator. Now you can be very motivated and sit in the US and say, "Yes, I want to go to Canada." A big question there is, what will you do for your work? And that is a very good segue into what I really want to kind of dive deep into is how did you and Mohan, specifically you, because we want to hear from your path, is how did you think about career as one of the factors when it comes to moving to Canada?
So yeah, for many reasons, I'll focus on my journey. Partly because Mohan is very private and he does not want his career or his path discussed. So I'll just share mine.
Yeah.
Well, I heard from, sometimes being scared is a good thing, right? Everybody told me it's just so difficult to find a job in Canada. So I had
Mm,
that fire going on the side, early. So
mm,
that told me that I needed to start my conversations early, especially because I'm entering a completely new market. It's not just about finding a job, it's also understanding the market, right? What goes on here? How is Health Canada different from the FDA as an agency? I had very
mm,
limited experience with Health Canada at that time. So it started off with, okay, I need to do all of this work early. And I should add, I had a lot of time, right? I wasn't
mm,
working, so I had that luxury of time. So I did start early, and I started like everybody else. And I should say, I hated reaching out to people at that time. In fact, for a very short period of time during the pandemic, I had a podcast, and that was not long lived. But even reaching out to people for that used to tie me up in knots. I hated it. I didn't know how to do it. I was bad at it. All of it. So I started the same way everybody does, right? With the job in mind and cold emails and connections without notes and all. I made every mistake in the book.
mhm,
And it didn't work, predictably, right? But like I told you, I have a very systemic way of thinking, possibly because of my work and like life sciences education. So took a step back and I asked, what is networking? Like, what is this
mm.
supposed to be for? And if you,
Before you jump into that, I want all of us to get placed in timeline wise so that we
sure.
understand your situation, right? Which is when you were trying to network with people, were you in the US or you had already made the jump to Canada?
No, I was in the US.
In the US. So
Yeah.
from the US, you were trying to apply to roles, you were trying to send out cold emails and connection requests. And you said that predictably it did not go well. Now
Nope.
you've been on the other side of blank connection requests and just DMs that make you do more work than you need. Like, yeah, can we take a moment to kind of share like some of the things that you did that now in the hindsight you know that they were mistakes or not the best practices.
Yeah, and you're right to spend a little bit of time on this, right? First, I didn't choose very well who I should reach out to, right? I just would find somebody working in random medical device company and roughly my kind of career maturity, and just reach out to them with a message that, hey, I'm a newcomer coming to Canada. I have no idea about this and that. So I want to talk to you. There was not a clear ask. Like, what am I looking for? Why am I reaching out to you as opposed to the 100,000 other people I could reach out to? There was no clarity, right? There was no, you have done this specific thing that I find really interesting and I think that might apply to me. I wasn't clear about what I was bringing to the table. Like, I really should have emphasized my work experience, right? You would think. Didn't do
Mm-hmm.
that. Um, Also, I reached out a lot to recruiters, which in my industry at least doesn't work at all. Uh, because I find recruiters find people for jobs, not jobs for people. Like, if you
Mm-hmm.
happen to reach out to the right recruiter who has the exact role that you're a fit for, great. But otherwise it's not really going to work. And Canada is not as recruiter run as the US is. So there's just so many differences. I didn't understand the market. I didn't understand that I needed to understand the market. Right, all of that stuff. So yeah, I would say these were the few mistakes. Connection requests without notes or any context, that's a big one. Um, so I would say, yeah, these were the top hits of my low lights.
We've all have that, right? I
100%.
enjoy talking about my failure resume more than the success resume because the
Yeah.
failures are really the foundation on which that I build the successes on. So I like that we spend time there. I'm curious to know, how did that feel, right? Reaching out, trying to network and not getting anywhere. First, how did that feel? And second, when did you, how long into this process were you like, okay, I need to take a step back and reevaluate what I'm doing?
Um, I'll answer the second one first. I want to say I did the whole, you know, poor networking thing for about a good 3, 4 months, right? And my metric was volume. Like, how many
Mm,
people am I reaching out to? Again, that's a mistake, I think.
mm,
Because once you make something a metric, you run towards that, right? Like, wow, I sent 100, requests today or whatever. And if it's a meaningless metric, you get meaningless outcomes from that. So that's one. How it felt, I honestly didn't take it too poorly that people were not reaching out to me. I know people who take networking very personally, and we should get to that at some point. But I didn't particularly care that people didn't reach out to me. It was more, oh, I'm not getting the results I want. Not so much that, oh, people are terrible. They don't want to help others. That was not the view I had because, well, if I'm being honest, how much did I log on to LinkedIn before I actually actively needed something? Right. So it was quite obvious to me that it's not like anybody rolled out of bed that morning to specifically not reach out to me. Right. So that was not an issue. It felt like I was putting a lot of effort in the wrong direction. And that's what caused me to kind of reevaluate.
mm. And when you reevaluated, how long was this to the actual move? Or did you guys decide in a way that only after we get a job will we move? I think that is also important for us to
Yeah.
understand.
So we didn't have that luxury. We had to
Okay.
move at a particular time, both because of COVID, our express entry application was hugely delayed, right? So our medicals would expire, right? So that was one reason from Canada. The other reason from the US is our visa status was expiring. So there was no negotiation whatsoever in when we would have to move. If we got PR, we would leave. That was
Mm.
always the thing we would need to do. As for when I started reevaluating, and well, because of IRCC's delays, I actually had plenty of time.
Okay,
Uh,
that's good.
but it was very frustrating. See, it
Mm.
sounds like a luxury, but it was a very, very difficult time because it felt like the application had fallen into a hole and we didn't hear anything back for it usually takes 6 months. We didn't hear anything back for a year and a half.
Wow, that's a
Yeah.
long time. And it's a
Yeah.
long time to be confused about the progression of it. Like if you're getting updates that this has moved here, here, and here, I think you can still react to it.
Let me respond to that because there is this moment that's burned into my head. So, when we apply for Express Entry, at least back then, you have a portal and you have a progress bar that keeps moving. It doesn't really have specific milestones or anything, it just goes from 0 to 100. But hey, at least there's that progress bar, right? So, I opened it every day, every day, every day. And then it came to 99 and 100, and then it disappeared and no response.
Oh,
And that was a whole year before we actually finally got our PR. So, like a fool, I was just looking at that progress bar. And now, when I think about it in hindsight, it's probably automated. And oh God, it was such a surreal feeling to see that just disappear and nothing, radio silence after that. So, I had time, but not in the way that I wanted it.
yeah. I mean, it must be confusing also, right? Because you want to tell to recruiters and hiring managers in Canada that you can start working right away,
And I
but
could
you
not.
can't really say anything. So even when you network, you are like so confused.
Oh, that was a major problem because there were many people, especially recruiters, who wouldn't talk to me after that item. They said, well, when you have your PR, let us know you have a nice profile, blah, blah. But it's like you can't do much because you don't know when you are going. Um,
Mm.
so, yeah, it was a real catch 22 there.
So this is a great time to then come into the reevaluation phase. Like having all of these issues, how did you then make progress in networking?
So, one thing very interesting to me was that networking felt uncomfortable and weird and just not natural, right? And I don't know why, but I paid attention to that feeling because normally I don't have much difficulty talking to people one on one and connecting. That's not an issue. So why is this an issue? So I sort of thought about that feeling for a bit and I analogized it in my head to like, what if I never talk to my neighbors and then I walk up and knock on their door the day of a big snowstorm and ask for their snowblower? That's essentially what I'm doing here, right? I have no connection with them, haven't invested in the relationship, don't know who this person is, but I'm acting as if they have something I need and I just need to get it from them. Of course it's weird, right? It should be weird. So that was a pivot. That was pivot number one. And the second thing was, what is the purpose of networking? Um, is it getting a job? Is it learning? Or is it building a supportive community around you that you can talk to for other things, right? Like career development questions. Should I go management track or technical track? Like these are all questions that you will eventually have in life, and you want that village to be able to go and talk to the professional village. That was
Mhm.
my second reframe. One, it's awkward because it is awkward, and you should pay attention to that. We all inherently know how to network. It's talking to people, it's building a relationship, it's getting to know them, it's understanding what animates them, motivates them, what is interesting to them. So, networking should not be this hard. And if it is, that is worth examining.
Hmm. So, pivot number one was understanding why you felt the emotions you felt with networking. I want to take a pause there because I talk about this with my mentees as well, which is if you just reach out to somebody, knock on their virtual door and
Mhm.
say, "Hey, would you buy this product?" AKA, would you buy me as a product? You are a door to door salesperson,
Correct.
and it's okay to be that. You just have to understand that the conversion rate of that will be just a whole lot different than the conversion rate of somebody who's like a neighbor goes to you and then say thoda chini milega, like can you give me a little sugar in this bowl. So
Right.
it's a lot it's a
Yes.
lot different. So you will rightly point out that there is emotion involved, and there is this whole game of getting to know somebody before you can actually make an ask.
Mhm.
How did that practically change your approach? Like before, you were sending blank connection requests, sending them DMs, cold emails. How did that change?
So, one major way in which it changed was when somebody did reach back out to me, and I have followed that from that day on till today. My last question to them is always, who else do you recommend I speak to? Because that turns a cold connection into a warm connection. Now, suddenly you have somebody introducing you to their colleague, friend, whatever, spouse. And the chances of you making that transition to that next person is 100%, pretty close to it, right? So that is one thing I still do. And the second one is that I stopped thinking that a connection is not valuable if they don't directly lead to a job. And here I have a very interesting story. Won't take his name, but there's this person I connected with on LinkedIn, asked him some very like, specific questions. He gave me those answers, and those are very interesting to me. Like, he was a director level, you know, person, and I don't know why to this day he took the time out to talk to me, but he gave me a few like, do go do this, go do that, and those were very valuable. I did them and came back and reported my experience to him. Right then he got invested. He's like, okay, here you did that, here do 4 5 6, right? Did that and came back. And before I knew it, it was a very virtuous kind of cycle, right? And I've been in touch with him ever since. To this day we're in touch. I
Nice.
never have received a job from him, probably won't. But is that an unvaluable connection? Not at all, right? It's an extremely valuable connection. I can just run my thoughts by him about whether this is a good idea, is this stupid, and that pivot was really helpful. I will say, after this pivot, it's not like I had 25 mentors overnight, right? But I did have three solid connections,
Hmm.
which all helped in different ways, you know. In fact, one
Hmm.
of them, because we moved to Canada and stayed at an Airbnb and were eating like outside all the time, she actually invited us home for a home cooked meal because she's like, oh, you poor thing. It was so
That's so
nice.
sweet.
It
Yeah.
is.
So then, if this is interesting. So what I also noticed, and something that you've only mentioned briefly, is maybe there was also a shift in how you were messaging people. Like, what were you saying? And then let's go back to the point where you said, I didn't realize that I had to think about who to reach out to. So
Yes.
let's start there. How did that change? Like, did that approach change of whom you were reaching out to?
So I refined it a little bit. I refined it to people who were pretty much my role and had recently made transitions in the Canadian market, right? They'd gone from one
Okay.
job to another, or they had worked in different companies within Canada, right? Things like that. Um, I would say that didn't change dramatically because oh yeah, I stopped reaching out to recruiters. Completely stopped
Mm,
doing that because it
mm,
just didn't feel like the humanist approach would go very far because they are on LinkedIn for a very specific reason, right? Whereas everybody else is on LinkedIn to at least plausibly get to know more people. So that I would say is one big change. Stopped reaching out to recruiters. Reached and with that time reached out to more people, and I started reaching out a little bit higher, maybe at the manager level. I'll say I didn't have
mm.
much success, but the one person I succeeded with was enough, right? He gave
Yeah.
me so many explanations and so many contacts. He told me if there was anybody within his network that he actually knew, he would be very happy to put in a word, all of that stuff.
Hmm. So you went a little bit above so that even if you got one or three contacts to respond back, the value that you were getting just by the conversation itself was changing a lot of the approach that you were using to get into the
Yes.
market.
Yeah, definitely. So I thought if maybe even two managers get back to me, they know other managers. So that turns
Mm.
into that thing of, hey, who else do you recommend I talk to? Gets you a long way.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So, about the fact that you were asking people, hey, who should I talk to next? Like, how many people did you meet using that method early on? I mean, over the course of your stay in Canada or how long you've done this method, there will be plenty. But early on, like, how many new people were you able to meet with that approach?
Um, I would say not a huge number, but enough, right? For example, there was this person who introduced me. She's just a scientist who I met at a virtual job fair, career fair. I attended those too, and connected with people, talked to them. But when people are not able to help you directly, they will sometimes connect you to somebody who they know can help you directly. So that
Mm.
happened a few times. I wouldn't say it was like 20, 25 people. I would say maybe five or six. But again, you're not playing the
That's
volume
still
game
decent.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, that is still decent because otherwise you don't even have those five, six people.
Yeah.
And one thing about networking is that you don't really need a lot of people. At
No,
the
you
end of the
really
day,
don't.
you want one job. Like you're not that Soham Parekh guy or somebody who had three, four jobs in different tech startups, right? You can only manage one job, especially when you're changing countries. So
Exactly.
you only need one of the handful of conversations to go somewhere for the kismet to take action
Yes,
in a way.
that's true. That's true. And it's also thinking about this in terms of a chain, right? This one
Mm.
person will lead you to two others will lead you to four others. That can really start to work its magic. It's compounding, basically, right?
Yeah.
So connections do compound like that, and you don't have to get too stressed out about starting with a huge pool.
Mm. Awesome. By the way, let me take a pause to say that there are a few people who are following us live, at least in the internal metrics that I can see. If you have questions, I want you to add those questions in the comment section of the platform that you're joining us from, because that is the benefit of you showing up live. We could have easily recorded this session and I could put it out as a podcast, but the big reason why I do this live is for people to have the ability to come and chat with us or ask questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to bring them up. If not, fair enough, you can just be a observer, and I have enough questions for Sindhu till the cows come home. So now let's talk about the interviews. Like, when did you start getting interviews for positions in Canada? Were you still in the US at that point?
Yes, I was.
Mm.
And a lot of the initial positions, because I was expecting PR to come through in September of 2020, September, October, right? So I gave a few interviews with that assumption, and I said, well, I'll get PR in September. That did not happen. Um, I didn't receive any offers, I should say. They held back till they found out about PR, especially because of COVID uncertainties, right? So I gave a few interviews. Some went well, some went poorly. But yeah, I was very much giving interviews. Oh, I should add, like, by the time I came to Canada, I had the offer. So
Okay.
so there was no job hunting in Canada at all.
The whole entire job hunting was from the US. That is
Yes.
also exceptional because that is not the norm. I do see a lot of people having to move to Canada and then continue their search. So the interviews that you got, were they from networking that you were doing? Were they from cold applications? What were they from?
I'd say it was a mix. Most of them actually were from cold applications, but the advantage of the network was that I knew what to look for. what a good fit looked like, what companies existed that I may not know of. So see, it's very interesting, right? When you are in the US and on a visa, I feel like you're trapped into a very narrow box, right? Varun, honestly, I did not know how to think like a permanent resident applying for jobs. I was
Right.
applying for the same big companies, lots of security, won't lay me off, blah blah. And layoffs are a little bit lesser in my sector than, the tech and all that. So I was thinking with that same mindset because I couldn't project outwards into what applying for jobs as a permanent resident even looks like. So my people that I was talking to said, well, there's a thriving startup sector here. Have you looked at this? Have you looked at that particular event that is all about startups? And that's when startups even floated into my awareness, right? Because I just wasn't thinking like that. So that part is really interesting.
So the interviews that you got, were they from startups or were they from well-established companies? I mean, I can understand that now it just opened up your mind.
It did
And then
very
also
much.
the networking helped to unearth some of new companies that you may not have heard
Y-
of.
Yeah.
And that helped as well, right?
Yeah. So if I was just doing this by myself, I would have looked at all the heavy hitters, right? Thermoscientific, Medtronic. So the FANG equivalents of
Yeah.
medical device. But the smaller, more interesting companies, I actually found out about because of these conversations. So people told me to
Mm.
join various organizations that opened up quite a few companies for me. I spoke to some recruiters just to know about the company that they were with and not so much to get a job. So it really did open things up to me. And yes, eventually it was startups that were interesting to me because I would get to learn a lot. I'll get to work quickly, and I would get to do something that I would not have gotten to do in the US, right? I wasn't about to risk my security working for a startup. So
Mm.
eventually, that all of that is what led to me getting an offer with the company I now work with, which is a startup.
Awesome. I do have a question here that I want to bring up because that directly applies with what we are talking about, which is this is somebody who is in tech and planning to move to Canada in the next 3 or 4 months. What would you suggest to do, prep to maximize my chances of landing a job either before or after moving to Canada?
So, this answer is going to look very different from my experience. Partly because, unless you already have permanent residence, getting permanent residence from outside the US is basically impossible now. So,
Mm.
if you are planning to move to Canada in the next 3 to 4 months, you are going to have a job before you arrive so that you can arrive on a work permit. Unless you already have an H-1B open work permit. I don't even know if those still exist. They probably have expired by now if you haven't taken advantage of them. So unless you have status in Canada or a pre-existing open work permit or something like that, you are going to have to find a job before you come to Canada. And in terms of prep, see, tech has certain advantages. Tech has an ecosystem for job hunting, so you can follow people like Johan Mehta. You can follow job search professionals like Ron Johnson. These are all people on LinkedIn who help newcomers all the time. They will have a lot of insight into the industry. Tech folks have that advantage. See, there is no big conglomerate that is, or big group of people providing jobs in medical devices. So you have that advantage, and you should use it.
What I would also add is, yeah, I assume that this would be the case, which is they have a PR, they've been working in the US on H1B. So,
Great.
yeah, I had a hunch. What I would say to add what Sindhu is saying is, look, if you are in tech already working in the US, you should polish all your marketing materials and prepare for interviews in the first 1 month. You can do that. I think with the right strategies, you can do that. If you want the right strategies, you can always come to my page. I know that I am promoting that here, but it is applicable to what you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there are enough resources that I share about the job search in the US. Canada doesn't change a whole lot from like the application and recruiting perspective. What I will say differently is months 2 to 4, think about writing about the tech scene in Canada. Like what companies exist, like especially in your target market. So even within big tech, there are a lot of different niches. Whatever your niche is, think about all the top companies that are in Canada and write about the novel things that they are doing. Write about what you have done in your career. Essentially, show your work. What that does is that first, it gives you clarity of thought that will actually help you in the interviews. Then, I write on job search and I write on in my industry. I have so many contacts from Canada sending me a connection request. If you can get inbound networking, there is nothing like it because they are already signaling that they want to talk to you. That way, from between months 2 to 4, you can actually use that networking to learn more about these specific companies. I know that is something unique, but if you want to fast track your network in a new country, then that is definitely something you can do. And I'll have Sindhu speak on that because she's been writing a lot about immigration in Canada. You can write about tech in Canada, but immigration in Canada, I'm sure, has given her so many more people that are now in a network that she can tap into.
Before I jump into that, I will say one more thing. Find Canadian writers on LinkedIn or whatever and follow them, and even more importantly, comment on their posts. So once you start regularly showing up on LinkedIn, commenting on creators' posts, learning more about the tech sector, they kind of know you now, right? They see your
Mm.
comment every day and all of that. And once they know you a little bit, and if you were to send them a message after that, the chances of them reaching out is just going to be so much higher, right? Have those conversations in the comments. Comment sections are so valuable on LinkedIn. So, getting to know people through the comments just greatly increases your chances that they will talk to you when you reach out to them, and you learn things about the Canadian, market for your
You're
needs.
right. Sometimes you don't even need to write your own content. You can
Yeah,
just
just
show up
comment.
and write in the comment section. That's a great lower friction way of building a network in whatever place that you're going to. And this applies to people who are looking for the job already in the country that they are in. It massively applies for that. But
Yes.
in this case, this person has more motivation to do things because they are going to make a big jump.
Yep.
Talk to us
And
about content creation, yeah, and how now networking looks a lot different for you, I'm assuming.
yeah, I have learned so much about networking from my writing on LinkedIn for immigration. The interesting thing that I've learned is my conversion rate when I reach out to people about immigration is hugely positive. And the reason for that, and I have to admit, I was quite surprised by that because when I first started writing, I did it very reluctantly. In fact, Aditi, Aditi had to kind of push me into it because I was so nervous about it. And then obviously one thing leads to another. Eventually, you need input from an immigration professional or a lawyer or whatever. So I reached out to them. And I was just amazed at how many actual lawyers, and we all know this is not a profession known for free time, would just reach back out to you and say hi and answer your questions and things like that because they knew I was not doing it for myself, right? Because they knew I was trying to build something, develop something small. And I have to say, to this day, I'm a very small, like, LinkedIn presence. It's not like I have 100,000 followers or anything which would motivate them to talk to me for, purposes of visibility. Not at all. That has taught me so much about writing and increasing your networking surface area, right? So it does work. And the other benefit, and this I did not know when I started also, is that you actually make real friends like Varun, right? I know him from LinkedIn, from just my writing on LinkedIn. So many others who I've eventually met and talked to, who've invited me for things, most of which I've unfortunately not been able to attend. But hey, you now know people in the space that interests you.
You don't need to be a massive creator to get a
Not
lot
at
of
all.
networking connections because I talk about this all the time is that there is a difference between online credibility and offline credibility. The top performers out there, the people who are experienced, value offline credibility as well. Sometimes your offline credibility is really high and the online credibility has not met up because not enough input has gone in or you don't have time for that. But people can clearly see offline credibility. So the lawyers can see Sindhu's offline credibility. If you start writing on the platform, even comments, the way that you write comments, the way you write posts, people will see the value in what you have to bring to the table.
Yeah, and I will say comment sections and even posts, there's just so much noise, right? So anybody that is writing with clarity and value does stand out. I will say that. There's all these people who are like, I agree, and plus one. But if you say, yeah, but there's a bit of nuance there and add that, it really does stand out.
Absolutely. That's a great question. Anybody who's showing up live and you continue to have questions, please add it in the comment section and I'll bring that up. Sindhu, you have interviewed in the US, you have interviewed in Canada and in the Canada. And in both cases, you have successfully landed job offers. In some cases, they are contract, but you still need to convince
Yes.
the company that you are a good fit. Were there any differences in the interviewing styles between the two countries?
I have to say, for this one, I don't have enough experience on the Canadian side because I interviewed for, my startup, and I've been with them ever since. I've been with them for 4.5 years now. So I feel like I don't have a lot of experience, but I do have experience working with Canadians. And
Mm,
I will say that there's a certain um, work culture in the US that's very direct, right?
mm.
You provide feedback very directly. You say, nah, it's not going to work, right? In Canada, you have to soften that a little bit, I would say. The other thing is, in the US, if you're a really accomplished person, there's a certain degree of brashness that is tolerated from you because you're so good. Not so much in Canada. I feel Canadian workplaces have a lot less tolerance for the brilliant jerk, you know.
Mm.
So tone that down a little bit. If your brand of confidence so far has been very cutting, I would say you should round out that edge a little bit.
Interesting. Yeah, I think having helped a lot of product managers and software engineers, I do see some of them, not all of them, some of them either have that trait or talk about people in their industry who have that trait all the time. And I think it probably might be a requirement for some work environments. But
True.
having lived in the border town in Canada, even though I get kind of a little bit of mixture because a lot of people here who live still work in the US,
Hmm.
I do see where what you are saying comes from. Is that there's a lot more, like modesty is something that is really valued here. If I
Yeah.
understand that correctly.
I think you're right. And see, the other thing is, based on the comments and messages that I receive, there's a lot of frustration among people who have worked in the US that why can't they land jobs in Canada? And occasionally, there's also the strain of, I worked in the US, why can't Canada give me a job? Please
Right.
do not bring that energy to a Canadian interview. There is no faster way to be shown the door than to project that because you've worked in the US, you're better. Oh man, that will end badly. So,
You know what I was surprised by is when the whole rhetoric started, and we're not trying to get political at all, but I was
no.
surprised by seeing this, which is that when the whole rhetoric started about the 51st state and Canada being the 51st state, I immediately saw a lot of pushback inside Canada. Like, what, like people choosing real Canadian over Walmart, people choosing to buy specific products versus the other. And for the first time, I actually saw out outward patriotism and choice, whereas Canadians are again mellow and not really in
Yeah.
your face with patriotism and stuff like that. But I was pleasantly surprised to see that there is a lot of pride in the Canadian way. And I will link it back to what you said, which is if you feel like you are owed a job just because you have experience in the US, then that will not fly here as well.
No. And it will also not be appreciated if afterwards, like let's say, God willing, you get an offer, you join the job and everything. There's a lot of intermingling between Canadians and Americans in Canadian workplaces. People move, consultants come in, some leadership roles are remote and all that. Be mindful about the energy that you bring uh, in terms of work experience, and working with Canadians. I will. This is not exactly related to job hunting, but it kind of is. Don't assume that Canada is just like US light. I think people
Mm.
make that mistake a lot. And be open to the fact that you're now in a different country. The culture here is different. Um, and be open to it and take from it, learn from it. Canada's a lovely place.
Absolutely. I think I'll round out the conversation with kind of two final questions before we go into like a very casual rapid fire session. For me to even know you better and for everybody else to know you outside of all the discussion that we've had today, is that if somebody has to network in a new country, I know we've talked about it in depth. I'm just trying to round it out and summarize it. If somebody wants to network in a new country for a job there, what are the top three things they should be doing?
I'd say it requires more homework, right? Because you know less about that country. So, reaching out to people, even as simple as knowing that you're reaching out on the weekend after Canada Day, right? Happy Canada Day, right? Something like that. Just
Mm.
knowing that you need a bit more context, right? Maybe doing a little bit more detail into, oh, I'm reaching out to this person in this company. That company recently went through acquisition or merger. You can ask about that. So do a little bit more homework than you normally would in the US, because or your wherever you are, because you've had so much time to absorb information in your own country. So do that a little bit. Be prepared for a little bit of having to read people and the conversational style and adapt to it. Don't assume that what worked there will work here. Um, and I would say, when you reach out, emphasize that you're a newcomer, right? People are more willing to help when they know that you are, completely without background here. They may be likely to be a little bit more forgiving of the fact that you don't know certain things, and it's information for them to not assume a lot of understanding just going in, right? So they won't name drop a bunch of things assuming you know, because you don't. So be open about the fact that you are a newcomer. I think that's very helpful, actually.
Yeah, those are the great 3 points. I think what I would like to end with is something that we did not touch in this conversation, but it's not something that can be taken lightly, which is I'm assuming that because of the H1B not getting picked up, you had a career gap.
Mhm.
So you were not really just moving to a new country and getting a new job there. You are moving to a new country with a career gap. How did you navigate that in the job search?
I'm so glad you asked me this question, because for everybody with a career gap, they have to kind of think about how they're going to shape that narrative. Okay. And very early, I had decided that I would be super honest about it. One, I would tell them that it was not my choice. Two, I would directly blame immigration. I was very comfortable doing that. And three, it was that there was a lot of narrative in 2020, 2021, when I was doing my job search in Canada, that things were not great in the US because we were just coming out of the Trump administration. And I made a strategic choice that I was going to say, yeah, the politics at the time was just not great for immigrants. If the conversation went in that direction, I was not afraid to go there. And the last thing is, I was not going to apologize for, like, or make excuses, or try to paper over something that happened to me for no fault of mine. And I did layer that in with the conversation of why you moving to Canada, because people do ask that as well, right? Like, why are you looking in Canada? Because I've run out of road in the US. But at the same time, you don't want to make it sound like you're moving to Canada only because you've run out of road in the US. Very sensitive point there, okay, culturally. So I did say that this country and its value systems in immigration don't match my needs. This is not the kind of country I want to be living in. I want to live in a country where freedom and opportunity is possible for me, PR notwithstanding. Um, that's what I want to do, and that is just not possible in the US. So I was very open about that. I was very open about what led to my unemployment. I did um, uh, have some time where I was working as a voluntary consultant to a very small company. It was very little time, but I leaned into that fully because I did try to keep in touch with my field, and that is strong evidence that hey, it wasn't for lack of trying, right? So talking about that was helpful, and yeah, I would say those were the big, gap coverage stuff that I did. But I did think about it quite a lot. It was very strategic to go with, what the climate is like right now, kind of thing.
So, to paraphrase that, and I want you to validate it. So, to paraphrase, it is be open about the actual situation that you have faced, share how you've continued to be in touch with the industry, and then finally end with the positive part about why you're moving to this particular place.
Yeah.
So that the whole thing is not colored by just the truth of the situation. Something that my mentor always said, that in an interview setting you always want to end with positivity in
Yeah.
every single answer. That's just maybe his input into why what makes a good interviewer is always finding the positive nuance there and always looking forward. Would you say that paraphrases it pretty well as to how people should navigate their career break while moving to a freaking new country?
Yes, I would say so. And that last little bit of, so why am I moving here? Not just because nothing worked out here and therefore this is my backup option. It's true, but it is also true that you're moving because you find this place to be the the kind of provider of opportunity that you could not find here. There are many ways to phrase that, right? I would say choose the framing that portrays the place you're going to well.
Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, it's going to leave a sour taste in their one mind because they are
Yeah,
not really talking. So
yeah.
cool.
Uh,
I think
Varun, can I
we've
add
covered
just
quite a
one
lot.
little more thing?
Hell yes.
Which is that, so I had a very narrow view of what networking was, right? And part of my reconsideration was, what counts as networking? Is it just sending cold emails? Is it just, doing these outreaches, coffee chats, whatever? Yes, but there's much more to it. I would say the best and most enjoyable part of networking is to stay in touch with the people you already know. And this, I think, is a little bit underplayed in the whole networking conversation. I'm
Absolutely.
still in touch with the directors and yeah, director who worked with me at BD. I worked there in like 2017, early 2017. Whenever I go to Boston, I meet him, go for coffee. He usually pays, which doesn't hurt. Uh, all of these little things that you can do to stay in touch with people, they're joyful, right? This is such an easy way to stay in touch and network, I guess. And if it helps in your mind, just throw away the word networking and add building a relationship, maintaining a relationship, staying in touch, whatever works for you. Because sometimes I think we make networking bigger in our heads than it needs to be. And so it's scary, it's awkward. But if you just make it, we all already know how to network. You really wouldn't be existing in the way that you are right now without knowing how to network. You already know how to do it. You just have to psych yourself into believing that networking is not as big and scary as it is and lean into the people you already know.
How can somebody do it tactically? It's just that this experience begs that question because a lot of people have problem with that. How do you tactically keep in touch?
I don't know that there's honestly not a lot of tactic to it. So I'll give you an example. Somebody I know is from a country that's afflicted right now with war. I will always reach out to them if something happens in that country. I will reach out to them on if you're the kind of person that remembers birthdays, you can do that. You can wish them New Year's. You can reach out to them on text. I will say LinkedIn doesn't really is not as effective. When you're leaving, almost everybody will give you their phone numbers. Use
Mhm.
them, store them, use them, reach out to them regularly. If something reminds you of them, just text them and say, "Oh, I saw this today and it really reminded me of you." Who doesn't like to receive that kind of message, right? It doesn't have to be strategic. It's just you genuinely getting better at staying in touch with people. And yeah, do that regularly. See that director who sort of became my mentor at the time. I'm sure he didn't really expect to hear much from me later, but he did. I regularly
Mhm.
reached out to him. Kept him updated when interesting things happened. I asked him questions about, hey, what do you think about this? I'm thinking this way, but I think I'm missing something. Staying in touch doesn't have to be this big elaborate thing, but you should get good at staying in touch.
Something interesting is that I am a little bit more analytically minded. Even by saying that there is not a lot of tactics or strategy, you've really shared a lot of tactical and strategic things, right? In your answer, right? Getting people's phone number and staying in touch that way.
Yeah.
Reaching out at opportune situations, miss opportune situations, anniversaries, birthdays, something interesting happened. And then you also mentioned reaching out and asking for opinion by always prefacing that this is how I think about this, but I feel like I'm missing something, so that it shows that you've done some work and you're just not coming to them point blank. So
Yeah.
you shared quite a lot of tactical information that people can take advantage of. It's just that something that you do now naturally. So it
Yeah.
doesn't seem like a strategy, but that's all there is to the professional world as well. So right now, uh, maybe I'm saying this just to like take this with a big pinch of Himalayan salt, which is I can ask questions organically now, but there
Yeah.
was a time where I actually had to learn how to phrase questions, how to take out what the common answers would be so that I get to the next level. When to pause, when to not pause, what to dig in, what to not dig in.
Hmm.
Now it kind of comes a bit more naturally than it would previously. So it is all tactics in the beginning before it becomes second nature.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being if this doesn't come naturally to you, kind of developing a system or having kind of a 1 2 3 and just do it enough that you get good at it, absolutely. And one thing that really helps, I feel, when you are reaching out to people who you already know, is to know the names of the key people in their lives. So I will take notes on my phone, like wife, son, dog, all of that. So when you reach out to them and you say, how is Chuckles doing, well, it's great, isn't it? So yeah.
I am looking at this because I wanted to share something. I don't know if I will be able to share it, but these are all the names of people that I'm
Yeah.
meeting. I think a lot of this is also to save myself from the ridicule of forgetting somebody who should I should really remember their name. So
Yes.
that it also helps. But I wanted to share that because
Yes.
it applied directly with what you were saying, remembering people's names, or at least acting like you remember them by just looking at your notes quickly
Yes,
before
get good at
it
that.
shows it shows it shows some kind
Care.
of
It shows
attempt.
care,
Yeah, it shows
right?
care. Absolutely.
Yeah.
By the way, when you said 1 2 3, it reminded me of the song Ek Do Teen. It just that just clicked in my
Of
mind right
course
away.
it did. Oh my goodness,
Okay,
that's so funny.
I'm going to end this with a quick rapid fire round. This has been such an insightful discussion. And I have to commend you. You are extremely articulate about all the points, and this sounded like a conversation, which is a great part for me as well. So, some rapid fire questions. The first one being, what's that lady or girl behind you? Like, what's that photo frame? We have to come back to that.
Yeah, I just fell in love with this picture. It's an artist on Etsy who, just does these drawings on her iPad or whatever software she uses. And this one really spoke to me because generally, as an Indian woman, when you're dressed up like that, uh, you are typically doing something for or with somebody else. You're celebrating a
Mm,
festival, you're cooking for everybody, you're running after the kids, you're serving and doing things like that. Attire is generally not associated with people indulging in me time. And reading is
mm.
the ultimate me time to me, and writing, I should say, both. So something about that really it really spoke to me. And I have to tell you, this is not. I paid a couple of dollars, I want to say, for that art, and the frame is also not expensive. But that goes to show you that you can find value in just the smallest things. And yeah, I just love that thing. It's so close to my heart.
It goes back to something you said early on in this discussion, which is, oh, during COVID time, I was worried that my family would need me, my spouse would need me, my spouse's family would need me. But what went in my mind is that, dude, you could also need help. So it was me
Yeah,
also thinking like, Shirali is the same way. I mean, she's always putting people first, and I'm like, dude, you can get sick too. So
yeah.
relax.
Oh
And
yeah.
it kind of speaks to that, right? Where
Hmm.
when Indian women wear that attire, it's mostly to be like the stalwart for the family, or the nucleus of the family, and sometimes the nucleus needs a break as well. So
Yeah,
pretty cool.
absolutely. And yeah, there's just so many layers to something so simple like this, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Sindhu, what is your favorite movie?
My favorite movie. Oh man, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Oh wow, I've never
Have you?
even heard of
Have
that.
you? It's what's her name? My God, I'm forgetting everything. I have to say I don't have a single favorite movie, but something about this movie. It's a movie about there's this really famous actress in it, um, and she doesn't look glamorous at all. She's one of those people who's just all about the acting, right? She doesn't look like a star. She looks like if she passed by you, you probably wouldn't even recognize her. She's one of those people. So that itself is a big win for me. And the story is about a mother and a daughter that don't get along, and then the daughter gets kidnapped or killed or something like that. And it's just so complex and rich, and it's got so many like human emotional layers. Oh, I just love it. It's a wonderful movie. Highly recommend. Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
What's your go-to cuisine when you go out to eat?
Oh, I love Asian everything. Thai food. There's this whole Asian vegan thing going around right now. Oh, when you next come, I should take you. These are some really interesting places. Ramen, pho, like all that stuff. I'm very, very, very happy foodie. I'm very happy to experience and explore food. And Toronto's a wonderful place to be for that as well.
Absolutely.
Such an underrated food destination. Oh, Toronto food is fabulous if you get to come here.
I had heard in a short once that Canada has the second best of everything.
Uh-huh.
So some countries have the best of something, some other country will have a best of something, but Canada has the second best of everything. And they were talking about cuisines and stuff like that. That you'll find the second best Indian food outside India, like Indian food out of outside India. That's where you get the best Indian food. Same
Uh-huh.
with Chinese food, and they were talking about all of this, and I was like, okay, yeah, that. I mean, that can track. I mean, that is
Yeah.
an interesting point. I know this rapid fire is turning into a digression because that's just how we are as people.
Yes. Certainly how I am. I'm embarrassed to say.
Travel bucket list destination.
Ah, For some reason, I'm fixated with the Nordic countries and Scotland to some extent. The Nordic countries for a very clear reason, right? Like we tend to idolize Nordic countries in terms of the quality of life, the amount of public transit they have, the large social safety net, and all those things. So I want to go see what the fuss is about. So yeah, Nordic countries I'd say is pretty high on my list. Japan is also somewhat there on my list. I really like places with good public transit.
Wow, okay. That's the bar, right? Oh, where is the good public
Where
transit?
is a good public
Then
transit?
yeah, you should go to Mumbai then. That's where I'm from. That's like train, local train, rickshaw,
That's true.
taxi, bus, everything. You'll get everything to go from point A to point B.
That's
Nowadays,
true.
I mean, last time I was there, I booked a lot of Rapido, which were bikes. So you could go pillion on a bike and it would take you from point A to point B. Fantastic. All right.
Really.
Again, a digression, right? Last question. So let's say you this somebody is watching this live or they are watching a recording of this. Let's say that person is moving to a new country and wants to get a job there. What is a challenge that you can give them that can be done under 2 hours this weekend? So not something extremely huge, something to just get them to start to take action. What would that challenge be?
Are you saying related to networking or just anything?
Related to networking.
I would say examine why networking feels weird to you. Examine how you could do it better and just spend some time thinking about what kind of networking works for you. Spend some time reaching out to the people you already know in your past life, whether that's through email or LinkedIn. And if you can get their phone number, that would be even better. Kind of wake up those connections and do networking in a way that feels comfortable to you. Because if there's so much friction in something, you're not going to do it, or you're going to do less of it, right? And yeah, I would say in terms of the challenge that you gave me in 2 hours, I would say reevaluate what networking means to you and how you can do it comfortably. Reach out to the people you already know.
Nice. That is awesome. Sindhu, this was so much fun to have you on and talk about your move to Canada and how you networked and got a job here. That was amazing. If people want to know more about you, how should they reach out?
I think LinkedIn would be the easiest place. I'm quite active on LinkedIn. I do make it a point to respond to every single message. That's getting harder, but I do. So please reach out. Feel free. We can schedule a call if you'd like. I will say my time is increasingly limited. So if I can help you via chat, I will. If it's a call, I do. That's a paid service. But please feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to help in every way that I was helped when I was coming in. People took time out for me, and I'm happy to pay that forward.
Thank you so much for being a awesome guest on the Beyond Grad Show. And thank you for this conversation, Sindhu.
I'm
And thank
so
you for
glad.
everybody who was watching.
I'm so glad. Thank you for doing this. I've listened to obviously several of your other conversations with Sohan, with Soundarya. You're doing such great work, and I don't just say it because I'm here, but it's exciting, and I hope the Beyond Grad show does really well with interesting and fun guests.
Yeah, it's been a labor of love, but a lot of fun. I would do this randomly anyways. I'm just doing it live now.
Right, exactly.
Awesome. Thank you
Thank you
so
for
much,
having
Sindhu. It
me.
was great having you.